Is the principal of Wilhelm's Consulting, and she's the architect of a lot of leadership training. She's done a leadership academy at Point Reyes. She's done a leadership academy in Yosemite. She's worked in leadership more and more in a national park setting. Has a very strong public service ethic, has worked for the White House, for OPM, helped develop the leadership competencies that are part of the OPM model now. Has an amazing faculty that help do these presentations along with Pam herself, and has kind of become a personal mentor to me as well, and maybe some of you. So really excited to have Pam back here with us again to follow up on when you take risk. I think sometimes you fail, and you've got to be resilient. And so Pam's going to talk to us more about personal resilience in the workplace and what we do. So Pam Wilhelm.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Great to be with you all again. And I hear that there's 17 folks that overlap from when I was here 3 years ago. Which is going to be a little bit of an overview of just 2 minutes probably. And then we're going to dive into resilience. So our first test of resilience is playing with technology. We all have to be resilient about technology not working. So we're playing to see if the video will work at this point. Do we know yet?
No, I can make taxi
Okay, I'm going to keep going then, so tell me when we should try it, okay? Great. So, as Tom said, I've done a lot of work in leadership and organizational development work. My work for the past close to 30 years has been, can you guys hear me? Is the mic? Okay. Has been in the area of the shift from hierarchical models to living systems models of leadership. And how do most of our organizational models are built on static machines. We have these boxes on walls, but that's not how organizations run. They run as living systems, and we don't do a lot of work, or we didn't do a lot of work in getting people to understand how we really lead living systems. So the first thing I'm going to have you do over there is I am wearing this necklace. It's one of my client groups, actually in Maui, gave it to me. I was doing a program with sustainability leaders who are pushing on large systems inside corporations to drive a social and environmental bottom line. So all of my work is with leaders that are pushing in large systems. And I spent 10 years in government, 5 years under Clinton, 5 years under Bush. And my job with OPM was leadership and organizational development for all 112 federal agencies. So I designed a course, a 2-week course for change agents in government, pushing on big systems. So I know what the challenge is of trying to be resilient personally and to create resilience in our systems while we're pushing on them, because they don't change fast. You're not going to walk out of this 3-day program, go back and go, yay, everybody, we're now doing audience-centered teaching. And everybody's just going to do this, right? This is going to take a couple of years. This is going to take time that you go back and you push on the system here and you push on the system there, and the system pushes back. Because all systems are perfectly designed to get the current results they're getting. Right? Every system is perfectly designed to get the current results and outcomes they're getting. So in living systems, we realize there's a lot of antibodies to keep our bodies healthy, right? So when we want to come in and something wants to change our system, there's a lot of antibodies that push it out. Well, even that's true in organizational systems. And even if we're trying to move to health, there's a lot of antibodies in our system that push back against change, right? Because it's different. And so we have to build up resilience. We have to build up resilience in the system, but we really have to build up resilience in ourselves. Because the first line of business to leading any change is who we are and how we show up. So there's 3 areas that we're going to talk about in resilience. First is your knowing yourself. We have to start with knowing ourselves if we are going to push on large systems. We have to understand how we show up, what triggers us, and what we're triggering in the system. Second in building resilience as we push on change in systems is we have to understand the new story, the new frameworks. We have to shift our thinking to tell a new story and to build up the resilience in ourselves. And that's what this video is about. We'll get to that. And third, we have to create practices in ourselves in which we start to look at ways to build resilience. Because once again, we don't all go out of an hour-and-a-half session on building resilience and go out and be resilient. If I spent a week with you on building resilience, we still wouldn't go out and know how to be resilient. We would know how to build practices in our lives so that over a year, we would be more resilient. Because we start to build in, how do we shift our mental models? How do we reframe things so we're looking at it for a more healthy system? So this necklace, if you draw 3 concentric circles like this, they gave this to me because of this model that I used in starting out talking with them about resilience. So the center circle is entitled control. That which you can have complete control over in your life. The second circle is that which you can influence. That which you can influence. That which you don't have control over, but you have influence over. And the third circle is that which you have absolutely no control over whatsoever. Now, what do we have control over? Do we have control over our kids?
No. Depends on
No.
the age.
We have no control over what happens around us. We have no control. We only have control over how we respond to things. And that's the first thing in recognizing building resilience in ourselves. That regardless of what happens around us, we get to choose how we react to it. And the more we focus on what's going on in our own bodies, and knowing ourselves, understanding how we're being triggered, what's happening in the health of our own system, the more we build our capacity to understand how we can help push the bigger system. So the more we focus on that center circle, the larger the middle circle gets. We have a larger area of influence when we focus on what we can control. When we focus on what we can't control, our circle of influence gets smaller. Does that make sense? You guys with me? Okay. When we focus on what we can control, we learn how we show up and how we influence systems, and we start to recognize the leverage points to push on healthy systems. But if we focus on what we can't control, if we get too obsessed, and allow the story to be about what we can't control and all this change happening, our circle of influence shrinks because we show up in a less effective way. We show up stressed. We show up with all of the emotional intelligence research shows that the mood of the leader flies through the organization like electricity on a high wire. Okay, the mood of the leader flies through the organization like electricity on a high wire. What I'm gonna... Okay, this is for tweeting? Okay. And you can find me on Twitter at P. Wilhelms. I have not been good at Twitter, but I'm being instructed that I need to get better at it because every time I speak I'm speaking at more conferences and people are all tweeting about me and I'm not knowing about it. So I actually opened Twitter for the first time last week at a conference because people were stopping going, "You're all over Twitter." But I didn't have P. Wilhelms up there, so they didn't have me linked. So do you want it one more time? Did you get it? Electricity, the mood of a leader flies through an organization like electricity on a high wire. And it doesn't matter whether we've opened our mouths. When we walk in, people feel our mood by our bodies. I'm going to unpack that evidence for you today in a very short period of time. But so what I'm going to do today, I'm going to unpack a lot of neuroscience and neurophysiology that you're going to want to go out and do more research on. Email me. I'll send you things. I decided that to take this amount of time to get you to understand this, I wanted to give you some resources that you would know, oh, I want to know more about that. So each of you will probably want to know more about different things. So email me, let me know. I can send you more data. Are we working?
Yes, we are.
Beautiful.
I'm gonna be confident.
Can you back it up to the beginning? Oh. There we go. Okay, as you watch this, I just want you to think about what's going on in your body as you watch this. Sorry, Mac person trying to pause something. Okay, I want you to turn to somebody next to you and say, what emotions came up as you watched that? What does your body feel like while you watch that? One of my mentors early in my work, Peter Block, said that a conference or a seminar is a series of great presentations or great conversations interrupted by formal presentations. So my goal is always to get you into really great conversations, but then I have to stop them. So now I need you to stop learning so I can do some teaching. But it's when you actually start talking about these things and applying them to your work is when we do actually learn. So what came up? What were people feeling? Tension? Chaos?
Anxiety.
Anxious.
No
Okay.
control.
Stress.
Okay. Disbombardment, unease,
Excitement.
excitement. Okay. We had a positive emotion from that video. Yay. Okay, now I want you to watch this next one, and I want you to see what changes physiologically for you. And I want you to recognize the physiological change of those emotions. You feel it in your body, right? This resilience piece isn't something we deal with in our heads. This is something that we're feeling in our bodies. You can ignore the Lufthansa part. Okay, I want you to turn back to the same person and say, what are you feeling now? What's emotionally going on in your body? Perfect, thank you.
I still remember your session from 3 years ago. So I saw the notes.
Oh, good.
I need to consult them.
What is it that we felt from that version? Relaxed. Great, great. There was a flow. You kind of want to dance to that one. Kind of wanted to join people moving through the city. What else?
Energized.
Energized, yes.
So we were saying that the pictures didn't fit the music.
Okay,
You know, it just seemed like it should be a pastoral scene.
okay.
Discordable tension between what I was hearing and what I was seeing as far as the visuals.
Interesting, interesting. So do you know it's was the exact same? So it's the exact same, but it physiologically changed us. What's that?
I was just going to say, I felt the exact same. Maybe it's because I am visual. But
Okay.
I felt 100% the exact same. Like, this is what we
Interesting.
just watched.
Okay, okay.
That's what he said.
And that's good to know. We can still make our point on resilience, but you need to do it much more visually than audially. You know, a lot of people we shift by the music and the sound, but some people won't.
We both experienced the music made us react to things differently. Like the hand on the taxi, the first time it was kind of like, where is that coming from? And with the music it was like part of it. And then I saw the butterfly on the second one, and I didn't even see it on the first one. So it was like,
Yes, yes. Changing the music, changing our frames allows us to see things different that we don't see when we've got a different frame on something.
I had a sense of control in my emotions. The other one had a lot of action, and when it had a lot of action, like they say, it moves so fast that you can concentrate on what you're really seeing. With slower one, you can control your emotions and see more deeply what you see. Yeah,
Great, great.
Felt a little bit manipulated.
Okay.
By the advertisers, because they were trying to change my mood, and they succeeded. So.
Right. Well, and I used to have this where the ad at the end was cut off, and so you didn't see that it was an ad, and so people didn't have that response. But yes, some of us have that response. Wait a minute, they're trying to get us to reframe. Okay, this is, you know, I can close up and go home right now if we really get that this is the essence to resilience. Is that the world is going to be the way the world is. Stress is good for us. Stress is a good thing, and I'm going to talk about that. We have to reframe that. We have to tell the new story. How we deal with things is how we become more resilient in our own bodies. And we cannot be working in a system that we're consistently dealing with budget cuts. We're consistently dealing with change all the time. That is the new normal in the world. Not in just the public sector. This is the new normal in the world, how fast things are changing. So we have to spend a lot more time on what's going on in my own body. How do I get in touch with what's being triggered? How am I feeling it in my body? And how do I start to change the mind-body connection, which is what builds health in our system? So this all ties. There's all kinds of biochemical responses to that first video. And there's positive biochemical responses to the second video. And so I'm going to go through a little bit about that today, and then we're going to walk away with what's the one thing you want to practice for yourself as you go back to implement change in the system. I love this right behind us right here, because for some people, the case for change is the first video for them. Just that word starts to create all the anxiety of that first video. When change starts to happen, energy goes up in our organizations. People get fearful that they're going to lose their jobs, that they're not going to be able to perform well in the new system because they know how to perform in the old system. There's all kinds of things that people don't know why the anxiety is raising in them. But the anxiety is raising because they're not sure. It kind of ties to the risk assessment. Some people are excited that they don't know where this is going to go. And some people they want the roadmap. Tell me what this means and how we're going to do this. And so as we look at all of this, we've got to first look at ourselves and look at our own ability to keep ourselves resilient in the midst of change. So that's what I'm going to talk about, and then we'll link back at the end to what that means for building resilience in our systems. Because as leaders, you're going back to bring this information to people who are all going to have kind of the same challenges internal to themselves. I mean, there's some people that look at that, the case for change, and it's the calm, exciting video. Because they're like, yes, we've needed to do this for so long, and we've been wanting to do it, and it's finally a system-wide, service-wide conversation, and we get to be creative. So all of that is happening in your system at once. So there's 4 dimensions of leadership that I deal with always in my leadership. And I started doing this long before we had the emotional intelligence research because I saw it was necessary from all of the mentors and the people I studied. So we spend 95% of our time developing ourselves intellectually. But people follow us for the other 3 bubbles. For those of you who were here 3 years ago, I had you all at your tables articulate who is one leader who's had a great impact on your life, and what was a quality that that leader demonstrated that had such a great impact on your life. We made flip charts, so every table had 5 or 6 words. Then we looked around the room and we said, what percentage of those qualities were emotional intelligence qualities? And what was the percentage? 99%, yes. And a study at Harvard a few years ago, they studied the difference between mediocre leaders and world-class leaders in leading change in our organizations today. And there was only one cognitive competency that was the distinguishing. Now, there are cognitive competencies that get you to the table as a leader. But the distinguishing characteristics from mediocre leadership to great leadership in our fast-moving organizations today, there was only one cognitive competency, and the rest were emotional intelligence competencies. The one cognitive was the ability to recognize patterns in disparate systems and to be able to pull together so much information and to see patterns across it. Now, our ability to communicate that to people then brings us back to our emotional intelligence competencies, even when we see the patterns across disparate information. So this, I always ask people, what percentage of your time are you spending in each of these bubbles for yourself as a leader? The physical is the manifestation of what's going on in the emotional, spiritual, intellectual. What are we doing for exercise? We'll get to that at the end. The spiritual is not religious, but it can be tied to people's values coming from their religious system. But it's the spirit of the organization. You feel it when you walk in. I feel whether there's health in a system by the questions they're asking and where they're going and whether there's energy in the system, whether people are excited to be there. That's the spirit of the organization. And what I've found over all these years is that's directly tied to whether we're living out the values that are important to us. Whether people's individual core values are tied to the values being played out in the current system is a direct link to the spiritual dimension that people feel in the organization. So that you can kind of cut the room with a knife. We all know we've walked into a room where people are having a fight, and you can feel it. You have no idea what's going on, but you know something happened. That's the spirit of the organization. And individually for us, what we bring, the spirit we bring as leaders, is the connection by which we're living out our core values, and we're recognizing how we show up emotionally, physically, spiritually, intellectually. So I'm going to do just a quick trip through emotional intelligence because it's so foundational to resilience. But I did go through this 3 years ago, so I didn't want to go through too much of it. But it's crucial. How you show up as a leader, how that impacts the organization are the 2 foundational questions to leading change in an organization. And the question of your own personal resilience, the more you build your own personal resilience, the more you show up better to help build resilience in the organization. I'll just say that over and over. Emotional intelligence is knowing how we and others feel, why we feel that way, and what can be done about it. It's getting in touch with what's going on with us and how we're giving it out to the world, because we are. If we think we're not, we are. If we think we're just masking things, our bodies give away what's going on inside us. So we all have emotions. We can choose to express or repress them. Then we want to, that increases stress level, bad stress, when we're repressing them. And we need to be able to deal with them and know how they can be moved to a more positive influence in the organization. This shows that in the research, emotional intelligence competencies are 2 times as important as the combination of IQ and technical competence. I'll say that again. Emotional intelligence competencies are 2 times as important as the combination of IQ and technical competence in leading organizations today. The higher we go in complex, fast-moving organizations, the less we need technical competence, the more we need the capacity to hold the space for the collective intelligence of the room to come forward. My favorite definition of leadership, I won't test you after 3 years. Is there anybody in the room who's heard me and remembers my favorite definition of leadership? Okay. It's the abandoning of your own ego to the talents of others. It's all kinds of definitions of leadership. It really comes down to the essence of having followers and whether people choose to follow you or not. But my favorite definition is the abandoning of your own ego to the talents of others. Can you show up fully on all dimensions so that you can create the space for other people to show up fully on all dimensions? So they don't leave part of themselves behind. Nina talked about that on, was that Tuesday? On Tuesday. She talked about the ability to tap into the creativity and innovation of everybody in the organization to create the space for the creativity and innovation of the community. That's true in every organization too. How do we tap into being able to use all of ourselves so that we can show up? So first, the 4 qualities of emotional intelligence are self-awareness and then self-management. Understanding yourself, and then understanding how do I tweak myself so that I show up in the ways that are healthier. What ways am I showing up well? What ways am I showing up that are destructive to the organization? So self-awareness, self-management, that leads us to social awareness and relationship skills and management of the system. So those 4 quadrants are the 4 quadrants of emotional intelligence, and they're crucial. It's crucial to start with self-awareness for resilience. This is our personal resilience work here, and the amount that we learn about what's bothering us in the system is going to allow us to figure out, okay, so what do we do about that? How do I take myself to a place that's the second video? That the emotions going on in my body are the second video. And because that shift is not a Pollyanna thing. That shift is creating the space for what's positive so that we can do the same things. So I'm going to make the case for that, but it's physiologically we've learned in psychology that the more we focus on what's right, the more energy we get to fix what's wrong. We get focused on the negative, we get stuck in the negative cycles. So as we start to look at self-awareness, we focus on, okay, what's triggering me, but also what's buoying me? What allowed me to move to a place that I can reframe and ask the question that helps our organization move forward? That's when we move to self-management. And that's when the more we understand what's triggering us and what helps move us to a positive place, Until we know that, we are not going to know how to recognize what's triggering other people and how to move the organization to a positive place. Does that make sense? Do I need to say that again? That until we understand ourselves, what's triggering us, and what allows us to move to a more positive place, a more resilient place to move forward, we are not going to have the capacity to understand what's going on in our teams and our organization. We recognize that because we're getting really aware of what's going on in our own selves and our ability to shift that, our ability to shift it quickly. And when they train, I've done a lot of work with Treasury through the years. When they train people on counterfeit money, they don't train them on counterfeit money. They train them on our money. So they know our money inside and out. And they know everything about it. So when they see something else, they recognize it. And this is the same quality here, is that we have to know ourselves so well, and then we start to recognize, okay, this is what we see in the system that's going on. And then we move to relationship skills with a positive impact. And I'm happy to give this to you again. I'm not going to go through these in depth. These are just the competencies that come up in each of these, and we can send these to you guys. Self-awareness, self-assessment, self-confidence, transparency, adaptability, achievement orientation, initiative, optimism. I'm showing this to show there's a lot of competencies of leadership that fall out in OPM's 28 competencies for leadership that fall under the emotional intelligence competencies. Empathy, organizational awareness, service, all in social awareness, and then relationship management. Until so much about what you need to go out and do in leading change, and just this one thing that you're going out to do, although it's a big thing, you're redesigning how you teach, and it's a shift in framework in your system. And until you get through this, you're not going to get to this place of inspiration, influence, developing others, change catalyst, conflict management, teamwork, and collaboration. All of that only comes after you've made it through, gotten self-aware to the ability to get there. Questions, comments, fights? Sure. Anything? Okay, great. And feel free to stop me as I'm going, because I'm going through a lot of information in a short period of time.
We're tweeting you.
Okay, I will.
Will we be able to get these slides?
Yeah, you can get these, yeah.
Okay.
Some of them I won't send out electronically, but any of the information about it I will. So these I'll send out. So stress. Let's talk, as we talk about stress, one of the things that we need to do in reframing. So the first thing we need to do is know ourselves. The second goal in building resilience is to understand reframing. And the first thing we have to reframe is how we see stress. So stress occurs when a significant change happens to the body, mind, spirit, or environment in which you live. So it's not something we see that's normal. Those of us who are here in the Bay Area are having fun that we're seeing the left-hand side a lot in the last few weeks because of El Nino. Hopefully we're going to get the rain because of El Nino, but we're enjoying all the dolphins and whales that are coming in. Technical definition: stress is a psychological, physiological imbalance at the structural or chemical level caused by undue pressure of experience. This isn't that important, but I know some people like to get to the technical definition of this. But it's a psychological, physiological. The mind-body connection of stress is crucial for us to understand if we're going to build resilience. The key piece to understand in our own minds is that we live in a world which we make up a lot of stress. We write stories about things that create so much undue stress in our bodies that aren't helpful for us. So we're going to get back to rewriting those stories. Cost of stress. 75 to 90% of doctor visits are stress related. 80% of workers feel stress. $602 per worker per year, 3.5 million annually, and anticipated absenteeism. I think that's much higher now. This is an old statistic. Over 300 billion annual cost to the U.S. industries and to government. So as we look at stress, we have to realize what it does to our autonomic nervous system. It's a great book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Why zebras don't get ulcers. They have the same fight or flight response when they see a lion and they take off running. But it's an actual life or death emergency, right? And they escape it, they get to a meadow, and they lay down, and they rest and digest. And everything that started to happen on the sympathetic nervous system as the heartbeat accelerates and everything dilates and it inhibits secretion, all these things start to happen. We literally lose our peripheral vision when we move into fight or flight. There's some 1,400 biochemical responses to anger. Anger and frustration are the two most negative emotions biochemically. And we move to this side anytime we feel in danger. So as we look at this case for change, unfortunately as humans, we move to this fight or flight in places that we make up, that we actually feel like we're in a life or death situation to our body. We are sitting in traffic at work, or we are sitting in traffic on our way to work, and we know we're going to be late for this meeting. The heart starts to pump. We start to get really anxious. Everything in our body, that our peripheral vision shuts down. We lose our highest level of thinking. And we start to make up all these stories, because where our subconscious is going is we're going to lose our jobs, our kids aren't going to have any money, we're going to be out on the streets. That's the life or death towards us being late for a meeting, right? And our bodies go there unless we're able to stop it. And also when we're in traffic, if we get cut off, or if we're dealing with in that stress already, it's easy for us to go to anger. Anger has 1,400 biochemical responses and has a 3-hour spike in our body that starts to push cortisol through our system. So once we push cortisol through our system, we then tend to think about everything negative. So we go into a spiral. So we have to get to the point where we can shift our bodies back to the good music, the place where our bodies can be more healthy, can think more clearly, we can get to our highest level of thinking, and we can help our organization go forward. Because this happens in a meeting. We're trying to lead something in a meeting, and there's one person who always takes it negative, right? So there's all this energy in the room, and you know as soon as they open their mouths, there's going to be like a pin in the balloon, and you can just hear this huge sucking sound of all the energy in the room is just getting sucked out, right? Right? And we as leaders are sitting there, and we go to fight or flight. We go to this, oh no, not again, I've done all this work for this meeting. I need to have people thinking positively about this. I need them to not be following this person. We need to do the work at that point to be able to get ourselves centered, to get back to a place that we've got DHEA flowing through our system, which is what happened in the second part of that video. Second part of that video, DHEA started moving through our system, which opens up our highest level of thinking. And we get centered, and we're able to think more clearly. We're able to take the organization forward. Our mood shifts significantly. We have to be able to do that internally. We have to be able to replay the music in our brains at any given moment as leaders driving change. Not only for our own physical health, but for our ability to lead the physical health around us. Because then that we go back to our office and we go and talk to somebody who knows the same situation. We commiserate, right? And we just keep talking about, oh, we're never going to get anywhere as long as that person's here, right? And we can't fire them because we're in the federal government. We don't have enough performance issues for them. So how do we start to create the space for positive movement forward? And that's the resilience work you have to do in your own body first, to then be able to come up with what's the question in the room that's going to get everybody excited again past that person's negativity. That's the brilliance of doing your own centered work, is to be able to practice in off times of what gets you centered, what brings you back to a positive place, so that you can then be able to move over to this side. And we have to be balancing the rest and digest. So the truth about stress, there will be stress. When we're training for a marathon, it's really positive that we go put stress on our bodies, right? Stress is what we do to grow. We go put ourselves in situations that start to put a lot of stress on our muscles. If we take it too far, then we have to stop training for 6 weeks because we destroyed our muscle. But it's about going out every day and putting a little bit more stress on the system, because it's positive stress. There's a reframing of stress right there, because stress is there. It's not going away. We don't get to say we're going to go lay in bed all day and everything's just going to be beautiful and wonderful. Stress is a positive thing because it's something that raises the bar on us. All of the research out of the Center for Creative Leadership that they've done for years about where leaders have grown the most and learned the most, when they studied CEOs and leaders in a number of different positions in government, they said, where have been the places where you have grown the most? And it's always in points of stress. It's always in some crucible moment that you got thrown into over your head, or you're in a new job, or it's some place where we had to ramp up with a lot of stress. But those are the crucible moments of growth in all of our lives. So we've got to reframe and quit talking about and whining about stress. That's not helpful for our resilience. We reframe our brains to, okay, there's good stress and there's bad stress. And we have to figure out how to work through this in our fast-changing organizations. It can be beneficial, performance benefits, physiological benefits, physiological thriving, stress-related growth and learning. Stress is not the problem. Now, some of us like change more than others. So it causes more stress on some people, negative stress, to be in change. So we have to recognize that as we're leading organizations also. For me, I'm on the adventure side of the risk. And last November 4th, I went skydiving with my 101-year-old uncle, who broke the world record jumping out of a plane on his 101st birthday. So my genes are kind of built into the adventure side of things. And so some of us, that's at the same time, I'm scared to death to go climbing. I have a fear of heights, looking over edges. It's very funny. I had no fear of jumping out of a plane, but I have a fear of standing over the edge of a cliff looking down. So we have to know ourselves and know the idiosyncrasies that are not consistent across anything. So stressful emotions and negative stress, 1,400 biochemical responses. HeartMath did this research, an amazing organization. I can send you links to their research. They're continuing to do it. They started research in '91 for cardiologists on the mind-body connection. And then what they realized was the power of emotion for leadership. And so they started doing leadership development. And so they started coming out with their work about the same time as Dan Goleman, who wrote Emotional Intelligence in '95, came out. And so this intersection of the brain research and the heart research takes us to the systematic research. The HeartMath says there's actually more information sent from the heart to the brain than vice versa. That the heart is the big pump. And it's got to be connected to the brain, and that's for a much longer session. And y'all can fight with them on that. But I always like to say it because it makes so much sense to me in terms of our emotional centers. And the nervous system overload happens when we're in stress. When we go to the autonomic nervous system, we can't think clearly. That biochemical response shuts down our third level of the brain and takes us back to the monkey brain, just what we do by instinct. Mental inconsistencies, resilience depletion, compromised performance, positive emotions. Getting positive emotions pumping allows the positive chemicals to start pumping through your system, and it literally opens up our peripheral vision. It opens up our highest level of thinking. And that's when we start to build resilience. We build the resilience. This is not just always think about things positively. This is not a Pollyanna thing. We have to deal with reality. Great leaders are building resilience by dealing with reality, but going to a positive place in reality and recognize what's going on in your body. Because if we're just staying in the negative, it's not helping us lead. And we just stay there. So we've got to stay in the place. And the positive biochemical changes, we're literally rewiring our brains. The more we get used to making the flip to getting centered and that biochemical response. And there's an easy way to do it. I'm going to take you to it in a minute. We increase mental clarity and we build resistance. We enhance performance. So the flip sides of stress: panic and performance anxiety, stress-related illness, depression and loss of interest. It also brings us motivation and peak performance, physiological thriving, stress-related growth. Those are both and in our bodies. Around stress, around change, around everything we have to do. We have to realize we're holding that. And what is the difference? What's the distinguishing factor? Distinguishing factor is what we decide to do with our own bodies in getting healthy. So we need to recognize the autonomic nervous system, what happens in our hormones, and the fastest way to do that is to focus on positive emotion. This has been put together from a number of different people's research. The heart research, the brain research, the sports performance research. That we have to be always balancing between this intensity, this fast and this slow, the rest, the positive, and we want to decrease the negative emotions, but we've got to always be balancing up here. If we've got people always here even, they're going to get burned out. Fortunately, most of the time, we've got people up here a lot when we're going through change, right? Everybody's focused on what's negative, and it's really fast moving and a lot of pressure, right? As leaders, we've got to move the conversation over here because it's the conversation and the frameworks that change it. So one of the things one is telling new stories. Those are key for us getting back to our resilience. 2 is breathing. And the ability to take your body back to a place where your autonomic nervous system kicks into a rest space is to be able to get centered and breathe. Your center is, by most of the ancient traditions, about 2 inches below your belly button. And you breathe the center and you focus on something positive. Now, if we're in our one-day workshop on this work, I'd have you hooked up to a machine in which you would watch in your heart it would move from an incoherent heart pattern in which it was going like this to a coherent heart pattern when you move to the positive side. So when we are in anger, when we're in frustration, when we've shifted to that side of fight or flight, our bodies, our pulses, I can ask you, someone in your family, I'm sure you can think about, who starts your pulse running, right? Some of you have a long history with. All you have to do is hear their name, and then you're going to be in a room with them. And your heartbeat starts to beat faster, and you start to think, oh gosh, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to stay positive? How am I going to get through Christmas? We all, leave to go back to family gatherings going, I'm not going to be 16 years old. I am not going to be 16 years old. And as soon as we walk in the door, 16 years old, we walk right back into the family systems that we played with. So our family systems are often the funnest systems for us to see this shift very quickly to when we get people thinking about that person. If I had you hooked up to a machine, we would watch the pattern in your heart of the electromagnetic pattern, and it would be going like this. And then we get people focusing on something positive, focusing on something you appreciate. And all of the spectrum of emotions that HeartMath studied, they hooked people up to machines and they looked at all the biochemical responses on all the spectrum of emotions. So the most negative was anger and frustration. The most positive was appreciation. Not being appreciated. It's appreciating. Our ability to stop and appreciate and think about something positive takes our bodies back to a place where we can breathe, and that opens up our ability to shift the meeting. And I know this is a big jump for y'all for me to say that, but it is true. You can do it in a minute. If you're leading a meeting, you start to breathe to center, start to focus on something. Okay, I really appreciate what that person does for this organization, even though they're making me nuts right now. I appreciate the technical competence they bring. I appreciate the rest of this room. Something that allows you to get to the point. I appreciate everyone else in this room. Whenever I'm working in one of your national parks, I always say that oftentimes all you have to do is look out the window to get appreciation. Most of us don't get the privilege of, when we do some of the leadership academies in Grand Teton, I was looking at the river the whole time. All you guys need to do is look at that and breathe. Just say, wow, that is amazing that we get to protect that. Okay, let's get back to how we need to get through this meeting in order to protect that. And how do we get to a positive place in ourselves? And you've got to start with yourselves. So I want you to do this exercise with me. I want you to stand up. I want you to find a partner who's about your size. And male, female, or try to get same gender if you can. We may not have enough of that. So you're not going to do this yet. You're going to listen to me, okay? So we want everybody's safety is number one. Yes. You're going to stand. Can I use you as a model? So you're going to stand next to your partner. You're just going to press on their chest right here. And you're going to try to push them off balance. Okay? And you're going to listen, kind of keep note of how much pressure you have to exhibit or exert to push them off center, okay? So partner A is practicing, partner B is pushing. So do that now. I want you to just practice, just try to push them off center without being centered. So just stand there and try to resist. Just try to resist without being centered. There's a key point to remember about that moment too, is that the harder we try to resist not centered, the more uncentered we are. And that's what we try to do oftentimes when they're in the midst of stress. We get more stressed, and we're going to push harder, and we're going to move faster. But that's the opposite of what we need to do. We often say, don't just stand there, do something. In stress and resilience, don't just do something, sit there. I'm going to have Vanna come back. And I want you to put your feet about hip distance apart. And I want you to breathe deep to center. So breathe to center. This is breathing, focusing on center. Following your breath. And then I want you to think about something that you appreciate. Something positive. Something you appreciate. Something positive. Okay? And continue to breathe to center. Think about something you appreciate. And I'm going to try to push you off center again. So you put your hand out and you tell me to keep exhibiting pressure, okay? So put your right hand out and you tell me to keep going, okay? So we don't want anybody pushing anybody too hard here, okay? So you tell me to keep going, but I want you to keep breathing the center, keep thinking about something that you appreciate. And I'm going to try to push you off center again, okay? Okay, right there is where I pushed her off center before. I am now pushing as hard as I can to get her off center. Once we get to that place, the strength, the physical strength that comes through, that's also a place where the DHEA starts to pump through her system. If she was hooked up, she would have a coherent heart pattern. But we also feel it in our bodies. We get that strength. That opens up our ability. It gives us confidence. It makes us resilient in the systems that we're pushing on. So I want everybody to try. How did that feel?
Well, you know what? After when you did it the first time, I didn't know what you were doing, so I was easier. But like when she did it, I sort of leaned forward a little bit.
Right.
Because once you know what's coming, you're like.
Yeah. And you'll notice with the second person, that really won't make a difference. If you're not centered. If you're trying to be centered the first time, then it will make a difference now that you know the story. Now I want you to stand with your feet about shoulder width apart. I want you to close your eyes and I want you to breathe to center. I want you to feel that place about 2 inches below your belly button and get centered. Feel your feet going deep in the ground. Feel your breath. Notice your breath. Notice your breath centering you. And think about something you appreciate. Anything. Your family, something in the organization, something in the park, something you really appreciate that brings joy to your life. And continue to breathe to center. Think about that. Now I want partner B to put your hand up and start to push. And tell them when they're at the point that you were pushing before. So continue to breathe to center. And think about what you appreciate.
The first time he was just pushing with his hand. The second time he was kind of pushing with his whole body. Just totally putting shoulders out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Interesting. And you're present with your whole body. It's the other metaphor of this exercise is the other person's working with you at that point with their whole body. And you're present in response with your whole body. That is a metaphor to how we build resilience also in real conflict in organizations. To get people completely present. And dealing with the realities that we have to deal with and realize that conflict is a good thing also. That's a whole other day, but conflict is also a good thing. Positive turbulence, I call it. If we don't have conflict, we have a bunch of redundant people. We don't need y'all. We don't need to be paying y'all unless people aren't coming to the table with different ideas.
There's a real strength in peace. It doesn't take conflict or something. You can get strength from just being.
Right. Right. That is a key piece to resilience. It's a key piece to reframing what's going on around us and reframing stress. Is there's a piece to recognizing this is good and this is part of building the strength and growth of our organization. then we get in this centered place and we get to bring everybody with us into that. And it's really powerful. Thank you for that. Leadership is actually about the classic qualities of character that are in all of our faith and wisdom traditions that are life journeys. We never get to the point, I've been practicing this for so many years, and we never get to the point that we're going to stay there. But we have to, but the more we practice, we can stay longer. And the more we practice, the more we recognize, because it really only takes 30 seconds. If you watch yourself and you get good at it, 30 seconds of breathing and focusing on something positive can get you back to a coherent heart pattern, that your body opens up and you can go, okay, I can come back in this room and I can ask a better question than what just sucked the energy out of this room. And I have to do this all the time up front because I'm teaching people to lead systems change, and there's always people in the room going, that's a bunch of BS. You know? And so everybody in the room goes, oh yeah, all that touchy-feely crap, that's a bunch of BS. So I have to quickly be able to not go with them and say, okay, I need to stay in this space, and I need to take this whole room back to the fact that the touchy-feely stuff is what drives performance. Unless we deal with the touchy-feely stuff, we are not going to get higher performance. Whenever I get called into an organization, they often say, we want to increase performance, but we don't want you to bring us any of that touchy-feely crap. Well, that's what we all lead by and follow by.
When there's somebody in your meeting and they, sort of put everything into a nosedive, I can usually sort of deal with one, but what I'm not good at is that ricocheting and suddenly it's out of control. Like before you can even reel that one back in, they've set off other people. It's like a nuclear reaction, and I don't know if you have any advice for that, but that's where I'm like.
That last piece, that's why we have to practice. We talk a lot about the difference between management and leadership, and you have to be doing both in your position, management and leadership. But I always say management is head to head, and leadership is heart to heart. And when things start to ricochet like that, you have to realize there's something going on in the system, that you've got to find out what's going on in the system. And you've got to recognize that the collective heart has a great deal of anxiety going on. And first you have to get yourself back to a place where you can ask the right question, find out what's going on with you as a result, find out what triggered you, and then you can go to the place that you can get other people to move with you, whether that's going to asking a question about what's going on with everyone, which is often a powerful place. When the energy has been sucked out and everybody's gone negative, there's a danger. You have to play with this. The art and science of leadership. You have to play with, is it most helpful right now for people to articulate what is actually the emotion they're feeling? Because when people articulate it, then they get it out, and then you can deal with it. Sometimes you may not have time because there's so much negative emotion that you don't have time to bring it back if you let it all out, right? But you have to plan those times that people can get those emotions out. You've got to create the space for people to articulate that.
Leadership is heart to heart, and management is
yes.
head to head.
Yeah, I just got tweeted opposite. Management is head to head. Leadership is heart to heart. And you guys have to, in your positions, you have to be managing and leading. When you're going back to lead this is leadership. When we're taking somebody to a new place, when we're taking a group of people to something that we haven't done before, that's change, that's leadership. That's the how do we get people with us? How do we understand what's going on with them in their own hearts, emotions, what's all this stuff going on, so that they'll come with us. Because they're not going to come with us from us just going back and making an intellectual argument about this, right? They're going to come with us because they have a passion for the Park Service. And they have a passion for people learning. And I'm very excited about what you all are doing, because in this work in living systems, I had this aha about 10 years ago working with one of the parks, that we always spend a lot of time getting people to recognize what's the language that we use that's about hierarchical mechanistic systems. which is, all your language of your titles and, everything in your system. And what's the biological language that is more about living systems, that's more helpful for us to move to? As long as we have divisions, we're divided. So our mental models are about divisions. But that's what we have to deal with. And so we were playing with this. We sent people off for an evening to examine where do you use mechanistic models for static machines, and where do you use language for living systems, and what would be helpful to put into your system in terms of living systems language. And I was thinking about it that night, and I realized in all of my world of people who teach biomimicry, and how do we design around nature, how do we look at organizational structures around nature, our parks are our only preserved living systems left in the country to learn from. These are the only places that we get to go that's preserved for us to really understand how living systems work anymore, because we're destroying all the rest of everything. So there's such a powerful place for what you guys are teaching in environmental education and all that you've been talking about. And it also brings up a lot of anxiety for folks. So the amygdala hijack, this is what happens in that room. So you can look this up. Instead of there's what goes on in our brains when something triggers us. The slow track is a cognitive thinking through, I was bit by a dog when I was 3, but I've had enough experience in my life that dog is not going to kill me now like I thought when I was 3. But our amygdala, if we're still scared of dogs, it doesn't go through that thought process. It goes immediately to the emotional response. Things that trigger us, people that trigger us, history in our organizations go to, we respond before we have any cognitive ability to think about it. When we're trying to be resilient to people in our system who, they may want to behave differently, but if we have a story about them, that we let the amygdala drive our story about them, we respond to them negatively even though they haven't told the old story yet. So our own resilience is to recognize, what story am I telling about this person? How is my amygdala hijacking me? Now that's that moment where you just get emotionally crazy. And that's the Thanksgiving moment. Where, can we actually have conversations about politics without screaming at each other? Because it's such a long history. Everybody starts screaming at family gatherings, and it's very crazy to watch, because in other places you can sit down and talk about disagreements in policy. But
Not in Congress.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So the amygdala hijack is what happens, and we get triggered. So when we get to a centered state, we have to practice recognizing when we get triggered and when we're going to be taken away to the amygdala. And that's when things start to fly through the room. So the first thing, here's just some things on what happens because of chronic cortisol pumping through your system. When you stay in that autonomic nervous system, fight or flight all the time, it makes us sick. Diabetes, all of these stress responses are because of us staying in that place. We can get a whole lot more done and be a whole lot more productive shifting our physiology, and we're going to be healthier doing it. Sure.
It's such a compliment that we have to have you read.
Now these pictures can't be tweeted out.
Yeah,
These are that's why I can't send these. I borrowed these slides, so I don't have permission for them to go out electronically to people because they're part of HeartMath. So I'm a HeartMath consultant, but I don't have the ability to give those slides to people electronically. So that's why the emotional intelligence slides, I have that ability because they're mine. So this is heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's.
Can somebody stop that? Because it's making me uncentered. Yeah.
Is it in there? Okay. Power of positive emotions, longevity. There's a lot in positive emotions. What I want to get to here is how do you practice? What's the one thing you walk away with? There's the perception of what's happening around us that moves to our thoughts and emotions, creates our physiological effects, and rewires our neural circuits. We have to practice how we respond to the perception, what happens with our thoughts and emotions, for the physiological effects to be different and for us to rewire our neural circuitry. We literally rewire our brains over a year of practicing mindfulness. There's exercise, there's so many different ways. Breathe in the present moment with balance and energy, align the body, breathe differently, release tension on exhale. This is ways to breathe. People experience centering in many ways. Auditory cues, visual was much stronger with him rather than auditory. Many of us had the response to auditory. So we have to think through that. So think through what triggers you and what takes you back to a place. And where can you start to practice? Can you start to practice breathing, getting centered on your way into work? Can you set an alarm once in the morning, once in the afternoon, that you practice breathing to center? You have to put this into a regular practice or you won't know how to do it when you go to stress. Because we're not going to automatically go to stress. So you've got to look. So what I would say for the one thing for you to take away from this is say, what's a time of the day that I'm going to breathe to center? When I put on the seatbelt in the car. When I walk into my office, when I turn on my computer, there's something that triggers you. And say, what are you going to practice to have something 3 or 4 times a day that you breathe to center, you get yourself back to that place, and you start to look at what your resilience is. So I have taken through a very fast trip through resilience and neurophysiology, and we didn't even get to the levels of consciousness, but the more we practice this, the more we get to higher levels of consciousness around what's going on in our organization, which is when we move to great leaders move us, they ignite our passion and inspire us. And until we get ourselves resilient, we're not going to be the leaders that take people forward in that way. So I'm a huge fan of all the work you do. I'm so thankful to be able to work with the Park Service because they're my favorite people to work with also. The first time I did a Park Service Academy, all of my faculty who we'd worked all over the world together, they said, this is the first group of people that I actually would want to go to work with. So I love working with y'all, and I love, and I know y'all are working in very difficult circumstances with budget cuts, and just thank you for all the work you do.